Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. The European Union is continuing its engagement in the Western Balkans, with the bloc's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, visiting Bosnia and Herzegovina on Wednesday as Brussels looks to keep enlargement on track. At the same time, neighboring Serbia is preparing for early elections after President Aleksandar Vučić announced he will resign within weeks, while continuing to balance its European ambitions with close ties to Russia and China, most recently confirming the purchase of a new Chinese long-range air defense system. To discuss all these connections, we're now joined by Ivanka Popović, former rector and ProGlas activist. Good to have you with us. Welcome back.
Good morning.
So I just want to ground our conversation, our viewers, and we've been discussing President Vucic for some time, the protests for 18 months by the student movement across Serbia. But let's just hear what President Vucic had to say some days ago about his political plans. Let's roll that now for you and our audience.
In a few weeks, I will resign. I told the President and the leadership of the Serbian Progressive Party that in the upcoming election, if they ask for it and want it, together with you, I will help gain the people's trust so that we can achieve in the next 4 years all of this that I have been talking about.
So on the face of it, Ivanka, I mean, this seems like the student protests have won. President Vucic will resign as president. How do you interpret his announcement there, and what's next for President Vucic?
Well, yes, I would like to see it very much as, let's say, a victory for the students, but I would see it more as a way of Mr. Vucic trying to retain his position of power, because his party is not as visible as he himself. He is the figure that brings the voters in, and therefore I think he would like to run in the parliamentary elections and then take on the position of prime minister, and in this way retain his position of power. He also thinks that his name will draw the voters out to vote for him instead of for the students. So I think this is a political ploy or a means of trying to retain his position. Of course, as you know, he was quite known to have elections very often, almost every 2 years, because he was very confident that he would win the elections. And now it's becoming increasingly more difficult. There have to be more pressures on voters, and the elections have been rigged for years, but now the efforts to win will have to be larger and actually involving more financial means. So an investment of his party followers. So it will be an interesting time. We shall see actually when he will resign, because what he says doesn't always play out into reality immediately. It might take some time, but I think it is possible that by the end of the year we shall have elections, and it will be very tense. And it's difficult to say what the outcome will be, because as we know, we haven't had fair elections in Serbia in a long time, but it will be an election somewhat different to the others, because we have a referendum type of atmosphere where we are voting whether we want Mr. Vucic to stay in power or we are ready for a change. And I think most people in Serbia are looking for politicians that will abide by the rule of law.
Mm-hmm. And I think also what you highlighted there as well, and we talked about the protest movement of the students, it's been also very much visible. I mean, you've seen not just the students in Serbia, but also a lot of public action. I remember those bicycle trips to Strasbourg, a lot of public sentiment and visibility. So let's just share, this is from one of the protesters also quite recently, about what protesters think about President Vucic's announcement there. Let's share that with you now.
I haven't been listening to what Vucic says for a long time now. It's long been irrelevant. I stick to the fact that he is an incompetent institution. This is yet another play, another way of drawing attention to himself. We're all aware that he's been suffering from this for a long time. I would not be surprised if he resigned, like he announced, but it is certainly not out of political wisdom, but rather I'm sure that behind it is some pre-prepared play to extend his stay in power.
I think that his resignation will not change anything unless the government and the entire political scene, which has lasted for over 30 years in our country, change.
I'm an optimist. This cannot go on. Something has to change. More people need to be engaged. There are still very few people at the rallies. Very few people are applying to be controllers and observers at the elections. All of those positions needs to be filled. We need between 30 and 40,000 people for the elections.
So we hear some of that frustration there, doubt of President Vucic's intentions. If we do have those elections, then I know we're still in the future, but what would, let's say, success, if we can call it that, or satisfaction look like for ordinary Serbs that we've just heard there?
Well, I think the greatest expectation is that, as I said, the rule of law, that institutions will be working for the needs of the citizens and not for the needs of the ruling party. And we need to keep in mind also that Mr. Vucic has a vested interest that the Expo exhibit that is planned for 2027 is completed within his term of influence, so to say. So he wants to stay in power, and he is just looking to find what would be the best way to accomplish this. And he is a very, very clever politician, and he also knows how to speak to common people in a way to present himself as being sort of the caretaker of their needs, when the reality is somewhat different. So all of this is, politics at its base level. And I think that many things will be happening by the end of the calendar year in Serbia. But one of the comments of the people you interviewed is that there have to be a sufficient number of controllers at the elections on the opposition side. And this is now what all opposition actors in Serbia, the students and other opposition parties, are doing, preparing for the elections to be able to monitor them, because when the election results are announced, they need to be either confirmed by the public, or the citizens will have to protest if the election results are false.
Mm-hmm. Interesting also, you mentioned the Expo exhibit there. Let's also talk about Vucic's role and his desire to really play various parties at the same time. I mean, there's the one path also of European integration, that potential membership for Serbia. There's also reaching out to Moscow and also having those relations there, but also China as a major investor in Serbia as well. Just if we can, all those paths, I mean, probably he would like to tread them all at the same time. Do you think that that has to change? I mean, also looking at what the European Union has done or will try to do, do you sense him having to readjust that, or will he continue, and will Serbia continue to play these various paths for strategic interests?
Well, it's definitely Mr. Vucic who is defining what Serbian politics will be, well, regardless of whether they are the benefit for Serbian citizens or for the ruling party. And yes, it's very difficult to maintain this balance. He's having more and more difficulties doing this because the expectations of each partner are such that they want more commitment on this part of Mr. Vucic. And Europe is especially now being quite firm through the various resolutions of the European Parliament and various statements by European politicians that the expectations of Serbia as an accession country need to be fulfilled, and what has been promised. On the other hand, Russia is not willing to lose its influence. And of course, the Chinese factor is one that could be of economic interest to Serbia, even though I think the potential is not being fulfilled. So there is sort of an iron grip from all sides, and Mr. Vucic has every day less and less maneuvering space to continue playing this game. And yes, some decisions favoring certain partners have to be made, and hopefully this will be the European Union, because this is the logical choice for Serbia. I don't see any other option that in the long run would be favorable for Serbia and its citizens.
Mm-hmm. And also, just for interest and argument's sake, I mean, if he does stick around, let's say if he does transition as prime minister or another capacity, I mean, granted, I mean, there would be probably still criticism by students, by other citizens in Serbia, but then again, having a new parliament, potentially with also some MPs backed by the student movement, the protest movement, also Europe watching closely, Brussels watching closely, would that hem in or let's say limit or guardrail Vucic in some way, or are we too early to tell, or what do you make of that assumption?
Well, what I think, I'm not saying it's irrelevant, but Mr. Vucic has been sort of strangling the population for quite some time and strengthening the various repressive measures that are available to him, tweaking and changing laws so that actually the police and other forces can actually intervene, come into people's homes without warrants, and pick people up as potential terrorists or enemies of the regime. So if Mr. Vucic is successful in his bid to become the new prime minister of Serbia, what we can expect is more repression and more moving in a repressive direction, sort of the classic Latin American dictatorship type. And it's something that Europe cannot welcome within its geographical region. So that would be very disturbing, and I think not beneficial to anyone, because simply Mr. Vucic is actually such a political player. He is only masking his democratic himself as a Democrat. I think that in the long run, he would really like to be the sole governor of Serbia and that all institutions are at his disposal, and he's almost there. And that's why this resistance has to be so consistent, because that's the only way to keep Serbia from sliding into a completely autocratic situation, because we already have autocratic rule. But if we let it slide further, then the resistance will be more and more difficult.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen very much the resilience of that protest movement, 18 months now. I think that'll also still play a major part. Then we'll be observing it closely. Look, thanks so much for that. Always a pleasure. Ivanka Popović there, former rector and ProGlas activist.
Thank you so much, and I think the students will prevail.
And thank you for watching, but stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.